Chuck, I see you're on the line.
Hello,
Hello.
this is Cherie with Broward County Clerk of Courts.
How are you today?
Good, and you?
Doing well. And good afternoon to those just joining the call. And I apologize that I was late starting the call, so I'm just going to give everyone else a few more minutes in case they were trying to call and couldn't get on. Again, I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes to let others join the call in case they were having problems. Okay, it doesn't look like there's very many more people joining us, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. One thing to note with the operational budget form is that there are no major changes. So the form itself should operate very, very similar to the original 41920. There's at least one, maybe two changes I need to make you aware of, but they're relatively minor. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can see it better. Okay, so on the first tab, it's the front page, and it has all of our warnings. You'll select your county name and then get the appropriate warnings. As you go through filling out the different tabs, the warnings will change and adjust as things are taken care of. So my recommendation is always just on the first tab, enter the county name, and then immediately move on to the other tabs because you want to make sure that you've got all the other tabs how you want it, and then last come back to the warnings. There's been several times where if you try and come back to the warnings before you finish the tab, it goes out of order, and sometimes you do extra work trying to clear up a warning when if you just finish all your tabs all the way through, then see what you have left to do. We do ask that if you do have a warning and say that, it's fine, like the green warnings are the informationals, oranges are like, hey, are you sure that's right? Yellows are just kind of like, okay, we understand it's probably okay, but just wanted to bring it to your attention. Any of those three, just make sure that you provide detail in the notes box, and that way we don't have to keep going back and forth when we're doing our technical reviews. However, the red errors, we want to make sure that those red errors are taken care of before you even submit it to us, because those won't be able to come into our database with a red error. So, is there anyone on the call that's never filled out the budget form or the operational budget before?
Yes. This is Sheree, County Clerk of Courts.
Okay, and will you be a primary person filling out the form this time?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then if you've got questions, just be sure to stop me or raise your hand so I can make note of any questions you've got. I've looked at the list of people on the call, and most of them look like they filled it out a time or two, but I don't want to miss anything if you've not had an opportunity to really work this before.
Okay.
So that's pretty much all that I have for the front page for the warnings. Okay, and then Exhibit B, which is the second tab, this is the beast of a tab. It's the heart of the whole operational budget. The biggest difference in this from the original submission is you won't have the light blue columns. Those have been hidden. So if you're copying data from your original submission to this one, be very careful that you don't copy the data from those light blue tabs, because that will throw off your calculations. When you do copy data, you can copy and paste as special values. It'll be under this section. Copying is fine for any text. It can get a little out of control on numbers sometimes. Sometimes it will override some of the background formatting or conditions that we have set that will pop up warnings and keep you on track. So just be careful if you copy and paste with your numbers. Also, formulas or equations cause a significant amount of extra programming for our programmer. So we ask that if you're going to need to do any of that, do it offline. You can copy the tab into a brand new Excel file and do what you need to do, and then just paste the numbers back in as hard-coded numbers. And then for each position, as you enter a number and you enter a title, make sure that you're filling out all the cells. They'll turn a pinkish peach color, and those will be able to go away as you continue to fill out the form. On the FRS type, I want to mention to you that we have, under drop, we have a drop for the clerk. And then we have all other classes. And I can send you the information if anyone's interested that we got from DMS regarding those calculations. So when we looked at all the categories, they're all going to be at the same percentage point. So that's how we arranged those. So that's the one change that is different from the original form. For what you're filling out, you're going to be filling out what is actually happening now that it's been approved. You'll fill out the current pay rate and hours worked and information. Remember that for column H, whether you enter it in the annual or hourly, that it needs to coincide with the pay type you pick in column G. So if you pick an annual position, then we expect to see an annual amount. If you pick one that is hourly, then we expect to see an hourly amount. The only difference with the warnings popping up is when a new position is entered. It won't recognize $0 an hour as acceptable for an annual position when it's also a new position. Then you'll enter your hours worked in column I. And then in column J, your total wages, that amount will always be annual, regardless of whether you have an hourly amount here or an annual amount. This column J is always an annual amount. Then you'll enter your FICA in column K. Based on what you pick for your retirement, will auto-calculate, so 40 hours. And you'll see it auto-calculates based on your FRS type. And then when you're filling out for health insurance, you're going to pick either column M or column N, only one, whether it's general or actual. And then for the other benefit sections, that is O through Q, you can enter those amounts by employee, or if you use the bucketed amounts at the bottom, keep in mind that when you enter the information per employee and you enter how much of that position is court or non-court, those dollar amounts are automatically calculated for you. And so anything that you enter in the bucketed amounts, those are going to come in at 100% court. So that's what gets totaled down below. And then you'll also have spots for overtime, or overtime FICA related to the overtime and FRS related to the overtime, workers' comp, unemployment, health insurance, vision, dental, or life insurance, other, and if you enter a number in there, you're going to get a warning to explain it on the front page. And if you use anything in the other increase, decrease, sometimes just with rounding and other things, you might just need to get it to total a certain balance, then you'll need to provide that explanation in the info box below. Okay? So that is the quickie on Exhibit B. Are there any questions? All right, I'm going to take a quick look. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, so I'm going to go on to Exhibit B1. This is the other crucial part of the budget form, because once we get your personnel detail and then we allocate it by these FTEs on this tab, this is what drives all the information going forward. So if on a subsequent exhibit you have an issue, you want to adjust something, more than likely you'll have to end up coming back here to adjusting your FTEs. Or if you didn't put enough expenditures in, then you'll have to go back and update your Exhibit B related to your personnel. When you enter a cost center, we ask you to give those cost centers names, that you do not use employee names or employee initials, and that for those positions that each of your cost centers needs to have a unique name. A lot of times it's just easier to take your court divisions and make your cost centers your court divisions names. That's fine too. If you have a large enough office and you have divisions, and that's how you allocate everything by. That works. You have predetermined cost centers up above related to Title 4D, which we expect to see an amount there. You have a line for your elected clerk, for human resources, clerk accounting, and executive administration. And we also have a line on line 13 for jury. Line 12 is our balancing line. So based on the amount of FTEs that you enter in Exhibit B, that gets brought forward onto this line, and as you enter information on your cost centers, this line will automatically come down. So like if I wanted to say that my clerk did 0.1 in circuit criminal, that automatically get adjusted. If I have 0.5 in jury management, you'll see that line 12 automatically adjusts. And then if you get overwhelmed by the amount of lines that are there, you can come over here to this last column, take out the blanks, and then it shrinks it up where you're just seeing just what you have. And the trickiest part, I feel, on Exhibit B1 is getting your allocation splits right. So we have a default allocation, however, you can change that. So this is circuit criminal with jury and circuit civil with jury, and then you also have county criminal with jury. So as you adjust this one, you'll notice that it automatically adjusts E and Q accordingly. And then it will take the FTEs that you've entered in those court divisions from your jury. So, like I said, I only had point FTE in jury. It takes that allocation and puts 0.21 in circuit criminal, 0.18 in circuit civil, and 0.11 in county criminal. So if your jury allocations aren't going where you want, then you just need to adjust that amount. And then you have the same thing with your juvenile, delinquency and dependency in J and K. As you adjust one, the other goes with it. And then with your criminal traffic and civil traffic. Are there any questions on Exhibit B1? I don't see any hands raised. And I will interject that if at any point in time that you're filling out your forms and you have questions, just contact our office. Right now, there's myself, there's Jason Welty, our Budget and Communications Director, and then the other two budget managers that we have is Leonard Carper and Johnny Petit. And so any of us can help you. Just call the main line and ask to speak to one of us, or you can email one of us if you have a draft form of your form ready and you just want us to look it over real quick. We can do that. More than willing to help. Okay, I'm going to go on to Exhibit B2 with the personnel costs. So I'm actually going to go back real quick. And add some cost centers. So those cost centers that you add on B1 will automatically be brought forward on B2, and then you can allocate your dollar amount as needed, and then you'll notice that as you enter it, your line 12, our totaling line, gets diminished, and if there are FTEs in that cost center, they will automatically be allocated. You see over here, circuit civil. Also on each tab, as long as you entered your county name on the first tab, you'll see that it gets carried forward on every single tab going forward. That way, if you print it, you'll have your name on it, but that helps us here in case we print multiple, then we know which ones goes with which county. You can leave dollar amounts on line 12, but we prefer if you allocate it because then we know that where you're intentionally placing the dollars, and it helps us tie those dollars to cost centers, to court divisions, and it gets a little bit tricky if there's dollars left on line 12. So, are there any questions on Exhibit B2? Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so I'm going to go on. And then from here on, it goes actually pretty fast. Exhibit C is the operating detail. You have your UAS codes in column A, and then you'll enter your dollar amounts in column D. We did add the jury totaling line right here. So if you enter dollar amounts here, and then if you enter your jury, then you'll see that you get that total, and then you also get your combined total. I don't know why we've not added that before, but we finally added it. And then if you enter any dollar amounts in any of the categories that have other in their titles, such as jury other, OPEB other services, etc., then we'll ask for an explanation in the text box. And the warnings on the front tab will recognize if you have something in other and do not have anything in the text box. And will also recognize if you have something in other and have something in the text box. They'll just ask you to verify that the information in the text box truly does answer as an explanation for those items that are other. Okay, any questions on Exhibit C? Okay, again, I don't see any hands raised, so I'm going to go on. Exhibit C1, the operating costs, very similar to Exhibit B2 with the personnel costs. You'll see that your totals are brought forward onto line 12. And when we are looking at your jury management amount, we're going to look right here and see how much you have totaled. And we're looking to see that amount there. That's one of our checks when we go through this process. There we go. And so again, the difference between C1 and B2, you'll notice these are grayed out, so you can adjust them. But on C1, if you need to tweak one, you can. The only difference is, like I said, jury management is going to be brought over just into column E, the intersection of column E and line 13. But civil traffic is used as a balancing. So if the formulas can't figure out where to put dollars, or it has dollars left over after the equation runs, it'll drop extra into civil traffic. So sometimes you might need to move some dollars out of civil traffic. But you'll have to just be careful, because if you add dollars, you'll see it took that one away. But you want to also make sure that when you're looking at your balances on line 81 for each of your court divisions, that those are lining up as you want them to. So, are there any questions on Exhibit C1, operating costs? Okay, let's go on to Exhibit D. We don't tend to have capital as much, if at all. We're still trying to get true clarification on that. The statute doesn't explicitly authorize it, but it doesn't also restrict it. And then recognizing that previously, when you had 10% dollars separate in its own trust fund, you were able to use those dollars for capital-related expenses, especially related to technology. That sort of got changed when the 10% got rolled into the clerk's trust fund, and I know a couple people, we've gone back and forth with DFS, so we're still looking at that. But if you do have capital costs and you feel justifiable in explaining it, those would go on this tab and then get brought forward to the capital cost, which is identical to the operating cost tab. So, are there any questions on the capital tabs? Okay, nearly there. We're on Exhibit E, the net budget amount. This one is also pretty intricate, and it's our summary tab. So you'll see we start with the FTE sections. We'll start with court type FTEs, and they're brought forward by court division. Any amounts that were entered into UAS Code 604 court admin will get allocated across all court divisions. Any shared FTEs that were previously entered will also get allocated. And then your jury FTE will be on line 14. And then that will bring us to our total gross FTE. And then continuing to the other section, other funding allocations, then we have Title 4D, the amount that you indicated to be funded from jury gets backed out on line 18. And then if you have FTE that's being funded, say, by the county or from grants or some other funding source that's not from the clerk's trust fund, you would enter those on line 19, and those would also get subtracted from the gross. And that would give us our net FTE, which would include, which would not include IT. And then we would add back on line 24 any IT that you are funding from your CCOC trust fund. And then below that, we have these actual percentage allocations and target allocations. Target allocations were developed several fiscal years back as just a where we anticipate it, where we see statewide everyone's numbers are. Obviously, that's not necessarily going to be how it works in every county. So you'll notice that those warnings are only ever going to be yellow, and so you can provide explanation regarding those if you're outside the norm. So that is one of the areas that will not prohibit your budget from being submitted or from being entered into the database. So you don't need to stress yourself out over those percentages or think that you need to go back and change anything you've done. Okay, and then the next section is related to our expenditures. So we'll start with the court type expenditures, then the court admin expenditures, shared expenditures, and then jury. Then we have the Title 4D, back out jury, then back out any county funding. And then if you have any other non-CCOC funding expenditure allocation, so not county, if it was from a grant or some other source, then you'd back that on line 39. And then we would ask that you explain the dollar amount on Exhibit G under the additional info box. And that brings us to our net expenditures, not including IT. And then we would add back line 44, IT expenditures. And then that would bring us to our total on line 46. And then again with our target allocations and percent allocations. And so then when we get to our final amount on the bottom, here's where it's going to get a little tricky. You'll have your jury budget authority, and then it'll calculate how much you said you had in jury expenditures. And then it will tell you if you're over or under your jury authority. And then it'll move on to your CCOC side budget authority, how many expenditures you said you had, and whether you're over and under. So if I were to go back and add more dollars and would somehow be over, then the amount that I was over in jury from my authority, it would put it here in this blank and say, you now need to make sure that you've accounted for that with your CCOC side. And then that would add into the calculation. So let me see if I can go do that. 26,749. I had a whole bunch. Too many zeros. And now you'll see here that it says, hey, you're $17,573 over, so you need to make sure you account for that. And then it'll still tell us, like, okay, we noticed that your budget authority is this amount. This is what you've allocated above. Here's what you're over from jury, and now you still have dollar amounts left over. And then the very last one was just your total aggregate budget authority. So, are there any questions on this exhibit? Okay, and then on Exhibit G, if you filled out the original budget submission, you'll remember there was a whole lot more sections. Only Section 5 is required on the operational. I don't need any of that other information again. Provide any explanation you need to explain your dollar amounts. If you had any kind of other funding listed, we're going to be looking for that explanation here. When in doubt, provide explanation, because the more explanation that we get on the front end means the less amount of times that we've got to come back to ask you to give us information or answer questions. And then also, I'm going to close that. And I want to open and make sure that everyone remembers to fill out your certification letter. And you'll see that it's been changed slightly from the original to match the operational, so it's asking for your information. Verifying, all these different steps per statute. Make sure that your clerk has signed it. We had our website guides here Wednesday, and we noticed that we had several counties that had downloaded the budget forms, but only half of those counties had downloaded the certification letter as well. So I wanted to make sure to point that out, make sure you don't forget that in the process. And then the last thing to point out regarding the operational budget is the revenue projection form, which this one has changed slightly. You'll notice that we've gone back to the regular 2008-111 amounts like you remit monthly. So there's all those extra little lines. We've consolidated everything back. And then in the spreadsheet that John Dew sent out regarding the funded depository calculation, that's where we had an agreed upon revenue amount. So the only thing that you need to do if you read the instructions is just make sure that this revenue projection matches that amount, since that's what we've used for the year. If at any time that they decide that we need to get another projection before an REC meeting, the REC doesn't meet again until, I believe it's in February. So we might ask for another one then if we see that numbers are trending a lot differently from the estimate or from the prior REC estimate. But right now we're looking good. Everything's is actually trending the way that we anticipate it to. So I've already entered the projection date for you because I figured that would help everybody keep that in mind. But just make sure that your county name and give us your contact information in case Jason has questions. And so just make sure that the revenue projection spreadsheet, the operational budget spreadsheet, and the signed certification letter not signed by staff, only signed by the clerk. Those 3 items are submitted to the reports at flccoc.org email. If you want us to look at things, you can send it to us as individuals, but we will only take formal submissions at our reports email. We keep running into different offices sometimes sending it only to us directly. Just send it there. All of our staff here has access to that email so we can see when they come in. So you don't need to copy us directly because that just adds it twice on our server. Just send it directly to reports, or if you want to make sure we got it, you can send us an individual email just saying, hi, I sent it, just want to make sure you got it. We don't have our intern right now. We're still trying to replace that position. So hopefully before these are due, we'll have a person in that position and trained, and we can start getting responses sent out so you'll know when your emails are received. And that way it'll help Leonard with the tracking, because right now Leonard's the only one that we have working on our report intake and tracking. So that is the operational forms, and we have instructions online. After we get done here today and after this video clears, then we will have that available to be posted online as well. Does anyone have any generic questions or general questions? Okay, well, if you guys do again, I'm Marlene Bruner, and I'm here, and I'm available.
Marlene?
Yes?
This is Carrie from Martin County. Just wanted to confirm that we can have a negative jury amount as long as it's funded out of our CCOC, right? We don't have to move things around to balance it as long as it gets accounted for under our CCOC.
Have,
okay.
Jury dollars that you had expenditures on your form, and you still have jury dollars left over, then that's fine. Or the opposite, if you have more jury expenditures than you have jury authority for, as long as you account for that on the CCOC side.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a little different from last year, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate it.
Hey, are there any other questions? Okay. Well, then thank you all for being on the call. And, again, you can find our information on our website. Thank you.
Thank you.